We have been left with no
It's demonstrably complete.
That is not
Time to consider banning social media and perhaps even smartphones for under 16s.
A really good place to start is to think about, well, what is a filter bubble, right? Or an echo chamber.
And essentially, an echo chamber or a filter bubble is where you are surrounded by information or content or people that confirms your worldview.
So as a result of that, what you now have is you have a whole world of information available to you on the internet, but you are only looking at a very tiny part of it, right? You are looking at the sky through a straw.
I think when social media first came out, it was just a way of seeing like who you went to school with and what they were doing. And then I think people sort of clocked on, actually this is a great tool for like expanding messages. Social media for politicians, for example, and politics in general has become a massive tool.
It can take a very long time to build trust with your audience, and you can destroy that trust in a matter of seconds. Trust me. My motivation for creating political content is to tell a story that changes someone's life. I want my journalism to be a force for good. The reason we chose social media as a potential place to host our content is because it is democratized. So within the UK, you have a relatively established media landscape. Media barons, corporations essentially control most of the media, political media certainly, in the UK. And social media, in a way, can level that playing field. If you create content that's good enough, it can be much more far-reaching with a smaller budget and a smaller team. The algorithmic news feeds on certain social media platforms, the entire economy is about preserving your attention, keeping you engaged for as long as possible, because it enables them to serve you ads, as many ads as possible. That is their business model, by the way. If no one was aware of that, the fact that you get to use the platform for free indicates that you are not the customer, you are actually the product. The customer is the advertising agencies who buy space on those platforms to then advertise to you. What's one of the best ways of doing that? It's to make you angry about things. It's one way, it doesn't have to be the only way, but it's certainly a good way, right? To enrage people, to raise their passions, to get them arguing with each other, to preserve their attention and bring them back again and again and again.
Feels like, the he said, she said, this is wrong, you're a moron, no, you're a moron, is not working for us and is just increasingly driving us
into these polarizing, opposing sides of the spectrum. And what we need to try to do is really listen to what people are saying, try to tap in with our empathy and active listening to really try to understand what are the underlying fears and anxieties and stresses that people have that are leading them to have that belief, and try to address some of those things.
So I would say a way of getting out of an echo chamber is just reading a variety of different sources. And you're not necessarily going to agree with the other side, but at least hear what the other side is saying. If anything, just to strengthen your own views on a particular topic. Because if you can argue against those views, then you know that your argument is secure as possible. Social media can be a fundamentally destructive force, and yet I spend quite a significant part of my life creating content for social media. I think that used correctly and in the right hands, it can be a force for good, but equally, in the same way that a knife can dice a shallot if you're going to make a French onion soup, it can also cause quite a lot of harm. It's a tool and it depends how you use it.
Is social media a good thing or a bad thing? I think we must be really careful about falling into the same traps of being really deterministic about these things. So it is neither a very good thing and it is neither a very bad thing. There are lots of positive things that have come from social media, and there are lots of negative things that have come from social media. The thing that we need to do is to think about strategies and implement tactics and implement legislation that allows us to move much more towards the good, amplifying the good and mitigating the risk and the actual harms that can come from some of those negative consequences. And some of those things that we can do is we as individuals can think much more carefully about how we want to use these tools and what we want to share on these different platforms.
The responsibility for combating echo chambers and the other ills on social media extends beyond the social media companies. They are not the only ones everyone's responsible. It's very easy, and I'm guilty of it often. You know, you see like a ginormous multi-billion, in some cases trillion-dollar corporation, and you think they are the bad guys. Let's blame them. And you know, I'm all for that. Don't get me wrong. However, you should always be skeptical about absolving yourself of responsibility completely. We as users have a responsibility. The government as legislators have a responsibility. If we're talking about minors and children, their parents have a responsibility as well for how their kids use these platforms. We all have a responsibility for how we use them.